You're literally killing yourself. Like you will die. I was 103 pounds. I had anorexia nervosa the first time. Second time was benzodiazepine addiction. Clients don't come to me when they're just starting therapy. Most of them have been in the therapy cycle for 5, 10, 15, 20. I work with counselors. I have counselors and therapists who work with me because they know exactly what they're supposed to do, but they're not applying it. And CRISPR's original usage was for designer babies, genetic, like choosing your baby, what hair color, what eye color, are they going to be athletic? They use that same tech in the COVID vaccine.
I'm about to blow. I'm Tupac with the nouns and Biggie with the flow. Big boy with the style and Andre with the fro.
Ariel, thank you so much for joining us today. Let's start by telling us who you are and what you do.
My name is Ariel Ziegler. I am the owner of Heart and Soul Wellness. I've owned my business since 5 years, technically speaking. I've been in the coaching and mentoring space for 15 years. Crazy. It's almost half my life. I work in human behavior. So I work in optimizing individual performance, which typically goes to removing or dealing with suppressed trauma, stress response, certain patterns of behavior that are no longer serving us, right? We might have created them at certain points to be able to survive, but the discarding of the subconscious behaviors is what keeps us from stepping into like our optimal self. And I do it very uniquely in that it's just not just like a talk therapy. I'm not a certified psychologist. I have 2 years in psych, but I didn't want to be like constricted in that manner. But I utilize the psychology aspect, but I also incorporate nervous system and the gut microbiome because I have 10 years of therapy myself. Things were very slow, right? Very minimal amount of movement in an extended duration of time. And being an athlete, we're all about like what's optimal, what's the most amount of ROI, how can we collapse time, how can we optimize these things. So I address the gut microbiome and the nervous system. My first master's degrees were in physiology and in nutrition as well. And when we stabilize the mood, which is regulated in the gut, about 95% of our neurotransmitters are in our gut. That helps us move through things when there's more emotional stability. And then it also changes the brainwave state because a lot of people, you and I are talking, right? But most like that's more of it's a focused, it's a narrowed sense of perception. Our prefrontal cortex contracts, which is good for conversation. But if someone's like super, super stressed, they're in what we call a high beta brainwave. And that high beta brainwave, your prefrontal cortex is super, super narrow. You can't rewire the brain. Like it's literally impossible. You have to be in either alpha or theta. So when we stabilize that nervous system response, we bring down that hypervigilance. It creates new neural networks at an accelerated rate. And that's what I do. That's why I approach it psychologically and the nervous system and the gut microbiome all rolled into one.
I love that. That's powerful. Super powerful.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So I know your journey from like overcoming addiction, financial struggles, and even near-death experiences to like where you are today is pretty insane.
Thank you.
What was the biggest shift that really changed everything for you?
Well, the first one would be when I was 17, I admitted myself to treatment. I have 2. And that was like, okay, like you're literally killing yourself. Like you will die. I was 103 pounds. I had anorexia nervosa the first time. Second time was benzodiazepine addiction. And I realized like I have to take this back or you're just going to die. And at that point, for me, it was my own life. The second time was 2020. And I was apathetic at that point, like totally disconnected from myself. I'd seen a lot more of like the really gnarly shit. Like I'd had more near-death experiences. I'd witnessed one of my friends murdered right in front of my eyes, lost half my family. And I was like, I don't really want to live. Like I'm done. I started planning it out. And then I was like, well, I'm not going to leave my sister. So we got to face this shit that we keep pushing away. Everybody said I was amazing at coping and I was really good at production, but I was totally like disassociated for years. So faced my shit. Started incorporating and like, I have to figure this out, brainstorm it because none of therapy had worked for me. And then that's when I created my business was after about a couple months of really hardcore, like, do you want to live? Like, do you want to stay on this planet or are you done? Because I mean, you've accomplished a lot, saved a lot of people's lives, but are you going to save yours?
Yeah. Yeah. I know you openly talk about like how traditional therapy kind of failed you and how it's feeling like a lot of people that are going through it, and how you had to heal yourself.
Yeah.
What did you kind of discover about healing that the mental health industry is getting wrong?
I think it's a blend of societal norms and then mental health itself, like how they approach it. Like, first off, it's kind of like the doctor. It's like traditional medical. Like, why are we not addressing the entire human first and foremost before prescribing them a lot of medication? Like, you should, if you're exercising right, if you're eating the right foods 90% of the time, if you're sleeping, if you're hydrating, 85 to 95% of disease dissolves, right? So that's first and foremost. And I knew that, like, I knew that deep down. But it's also like very outward focused. Like, the whole idea around mental health is we have to fix this person. Like, there is something wrong with them. And because they are wrong, because they are broken, they are bad. And because they are bad, that creates that negative feedback loop. And this person is in this cycle of like, I always have to, there's like a perfect thing that I am trying to attain to, when the entire idea around society is very outwardly focused, which in the beginning, society was meant as a means for us to survive 100%, right? Pack mentality, a larger, stronger bond within, like, and we're also social creatures. We have to be able to connect, right? Saber-tooth tigers, hunting, all that stuff. Things have changed. Now society is much more about who has the best car, who has the best job, who has the best body, whatever these things are, these illusionary states of perfection that don't actually exist. And that's honestly where a lot of the disassociation and disconnection starts to occur, is because everybody's looking outwardly. And so my practice is a blend of like traditional psychology. I incorporate a lot of like low-key exposure therapy, some hypnosis, but then I also incorporate a lot of esoteric, like Eastern philosophy and more Buddhism, Taoism principles, which go inward. So starting to actually break down the experience of what's going on, as opposed to attaching these societal labels of you feel this way, or this experience is this way. Is it really? Is it really? Or are you taking someone else's projection and then labeling as your own, and then creating this hierarchy of yourself in comparison to something that's not even you? And believe it or not, that is the majority of what goes on in most people's, like, even people who are low income, 6-7 figure earners. I've had multiple millionaires come to me and burned everything down because they did everything and they're still miserable, because it's not about that.
Yeah. Yeah, I know I have somebody close to me that he went through like counseling, how to like become a counselor and stuff like that. And he was talking to the person that was like teaching him, and the teacher at the whatever school, or I think it's a government job. So
Okay.
whatever he was like, wherever he was learning.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, so I'm asking them questions. I know how to solve their problem. Why can't I give them the answer to fix what they're going through? And the guy is like, yeah, they told me that if I give them the answer, then it defeats the purpose, and it's not them figuring out the answer, which I completely think is bullshit.
It's bullshit.
Because if you can, like, they're paying you to help them, not
give them.
Like,
yeah. I quite often say, I have people who've been following me for years. Like, and some of them, they're amazing. Like, they literally just follow my content and apply it themselves. And I quite often say, like, if you can, I believe that everything that I put out should be common knowledge. And that's why I put it out. Like, it's not for my own validation. Like, I actually wish I had no social media half the time, but we do organic marketing and we play the game. So, I believe that we should always have the education available. Like, it's the dishonestness is people don't apply it, right? And it's because of these stories, these labels, these thoughts, these emotions. And what I do with my clients is I break it down to the actual experience. Like, what are you actually experiencing? Outside of the narrative, outside of the stories, out of the thought loops. And by the way, every time you listen to that thought loop and you indulge that thought loop, you are reinforcing that neural network, the very thing you do not want to experience. So my clients, I teach them. I want them to be a self-sustaining system. I want them to never need me again. And that's what most of my clients come to me. Clients don't come to me when they're just starting therapy. Most of them have been in the therapy cycle for 5, 10, 15, 20. I work with counselors. I have counselors and therapists who work with me because they know exactly what they're supposed to do, but they're not applying it.
Yep. Yeah, I was in a men's group not this Tuesday, but the Tuesday after. And one of the questions that they asked was, if your daughter was married to you, would you want her to be married to you?
I love that one.
And I started thinking about it, and I started writing down like a few of the places where I'm having shortcomings and stuff like that. And I was like, why am I writing it this way? Because this is, like you said, it's just building those neural pathways into the negative of what I don't want to be anymore. So I started writing it out the complete opposite way. And like, this is what I want for that person to have and stuff like that. And it just changes the entire perspective of what you're doing.
It totally does. Because we're all centered around like bad human being. Bad.
Yep.
Shouldn't do that. Slap them on the hand. And that we already, like as a Western civilization primarily, I have to speak specifically for America, because it's more of an American thing, in all honesty, because I've traveled around the world and we are the ones who are hyper-focused on constant improvement, growth, hustle, grind, get better, whatever the fuck that's supposed to mean, right? Because you're never actually there. Enough is never enough. There is never there. Better is never better, right? That the function of the thought loop is to keep you in the thought loop, because as soon as you jeopardize its existence and you prove it wrong, just like any organism, it dissolves. So, but we are stuck in this indoctrination, this religious ideology of like, there's always something else. There is always something more. And then there's the narrative of like, if I don't have this thing outside myself, then I'm just going to sit on my fucking ass. Is that true? Or is it just that you're burned out and exhausted and you've totally disconnected from your body? And yeah, you might actually need some rest, but you also need to see what's actually going on. Is that thing that you're seeking even yours? Or were you told to seek that at a very young age, and that's why you're so apathetic and disconnected?
I love that. That's a really good way of like looking at life and looking at even the goals that I think a lot of entrepreneurs make. They just make them. I don't know how many times I've been on like a coaching call with one of my coaches, and I'm like, okay, my goal is going to be this, and they're like, why that? Why don't you have it be this big? And it's like, it really like fucks with you, because you start to think like, am I not thinking big enough? And they kind of justify it as, oh, I'm just making you think bigger and set bigger goals and stuff like that. But when it comes down to it, you end up feeling like kind of empty, because it's not what you actually wanted. And it's what other people are just feeding into your mind.
100%. And then you wonder why you get there and you're still not happy or fulfilled, because that wasn't the thing. You were told that was the thing. You self-identified with it because you have a high esteem for these individuals, but you haven't actually sat down and allowed yourself to be like, where is this coming from? That's the other thing. It's like people don't even notice where in their body. I mean, we're so doped out and medicated half the time, we don't even know where decision points are coming from in our body. And that's another thing, is like with my clients, I'm like, does it come from your head? Does it come from your heart? Where are you feeling these things? Also, fun fact, do this with your family members. Everybody feels emotions in different parts of your body. Shame can be in the chest for some people. Other people, it can be down in the spleen, in the solar plexus. Some it's in the lower back. So who's to say that that's actually shame? Yet we label things all the time. But it's not like you're like, oh, here's a book of emotions, and that must be the emotion that I'm feeling. No, we're allowing society again to ascribe something to ourselves. And then we are creating an entire identity and persona, and then weighing and measuring our options based upon something that isn't even ours. Like, people don't stop and look at these things. It's just drone
that's
culture.
Where I think,
sorry.
That's where I think like Alcoholics Anonymous, even like going to therapy as a young kid. For me, I was labeled with like oppositional defiance disorder, which is completely bullshit. It's literally, you don't like to listen to authority. And how the
you're
fuck
a kid.
are you gonna...
And you're a kid. Yeah. You're creating your sense of identity. You should be questioning authority in your early 100%. In that time frame, in that age, from like 6 to 12, our brains go through the state of hypnosis. That is a naturally occurring brainwave that we go through developmentally. And then you're going through hypnosis every day. Whenever we're on autopilot, we're kind of checked out and we have no connection of time. That is theta. That is hypnosis. But the thing is, as we are aging, we are creating a sense of identity. And in that time frame, we are meant to oppose, because we are creating a sense of individuality. So vilifying that and saying there's something wrong, now this identity construct that the child is going to associate with the rest of their lives is wrong, is ostracized from society. So now he feels disconnected from society. His love, his worthiness, his acceptance towards himself is going to be completely washed out, which guess what? Either he's going to push back to society or constantly be validating to society. Happiness and fulfillment is never going to be within his bandwidth.
Yep, 100%. It's like bringing back the AA thing, like they tell people once an addict, always an addict.
Oh God, I hate it.
I personally don't believe that. I used to have a cocaine addiction and was addicted to other stuff, and I don't even think about it anymore. I have no desire or anything to go back to any of the heavy drugs and all the stuff that I was doing back then. But they label you this and people believe it. So they always think they have like this demon behind them just following them everywhere they go, which is just the label of being an addict.
It's not in my humble belief, it's not an accident, right? Because if say those addicts, because I had the same thing when I was in treatment for anorexia. I still remember I was there for 3 weeks, and by the third week I figured out what was going on. I was like, it's not about the food. Shit's going absolute batshit at home. I felt guilty. I was trying to control the chaos of the world. That's why I was under eating. I was so happy. And I was like in group. I was like explaining it. And my group advisor, Perla, I still remember her name. When she's like, that's wonderful, honey. But if you go home early, you'll probably die. And I looked at her in oppositional defiance. I said, really? Is that true? You want to know something, Perla? I looked around the room. I went, every single one of these guys came in here kicking and screaming. I checked myself in. You're wrong. And I walked out the door and I called my parents and I said, you need to come pick me up. I'm done. Never went back. So it's that label, right? That label, going back to the mind, right? The brain always wants to create a sense of known, of stability. That is the function of the human organism. And this is like the balance of the soul, the human, and the body. It can only ever see what's going on right now. It doesn't have an idea as to what your vision is. It doesn't give a fuck that you want to live to 100. It just wants to know what's going on right now. So it wants to create homeostasis. Always the function, create homeostasis. So it will constantly label things to create a sense of known, of stability, of homeostatic environment. And that's why labels are so self-soothing, give so much comfort to the being. And that's why they label you. It's like, okay, we're going to give them like this little cookie, right? And this cookie will keep them calmed down. And then obviously you get the community of the 12-step program. And so then we're social creatures. We're still second guessing ourselves. Of course, they're going to gravitate towards staying in the program when it's actually making them sicker, because that identification, now the brain is like, I am that thing no matter what. And what happens? The prefrontal cortex activates, because the brain doesn't like being wrong, to pull experiences into your life to reinforce that sense of identity, whatever it is. So now you're constantly going to be pushing back the rest of your fucking life. Like you said, a monster behind your shoulder. I never had an issue with starving myself again, ever, because I didn't label myself. Same thing with actually my father was an alcoholic. Used to chase after me, beat me. I didn't even realize till 3 years ago I was technically the daughter of an alcoholic. I never had an issue with that because I never labeled myself. And that further went to my belief in this and the studies that I've had, in that, like, if you label yourself, you are literally destining yourself for that.
I mean, you've even had like therapists tell you that you were broken and beyond help.
Literally.
For those listening, like, what would you say that if somebody's made them feel the same way?
Leave. File a complaint with the state and leave. Yeah. I have a couple clients who work with me simultaneously with therapists, and sometimes I actually work cohesively with them. And if they're not promoting your sense of growth and they are telling you that you are something, that is a practitioner that should not be practicing. I'm sorry. Like, there's some amazing therapists out there. I actually, ironically, found one of the best therapists, second best therapist of my life after I'd recovered, because I had free healthcare. I was like, you know what? I'm going to bounce some ideas off her. Best person ever. She actually referred me people. But like, if they don't support you, if they are labeling you, if they are telling you are sick, if they're saying you are doing things wrong, They have stuff that they have not dealt with at a deep-seated level, and you need to leave. And I would even complain because I would never want anyone else to be subjected to that ever again. And don't get me wrong, therapy has its place. For some people, it's amazing. For like really short-term stuff, it's awesome. For someone to talk to, it's great. Communication, all that. For some people who are much deeper entrenched, or they have a lot of stuff to work on, I've seen pretty consistently, it doesn't do everything that they're seeking.
Yeah.
And then they feel like they're broken and they give up. That's like my very second suicidal client literally came to me saying that I found out later that he worked with me to prove me wrong before he put a bullet in his head.
Wow.
Yeah. He was like, then I could say like, I really tried everything. But 30 minutes into our call, I explained a concept to him that his therapist had never explained to him. And he said, I don't care what it costs. I'm firing my therapist and I'm hiring you. The dude also had $100,000 in debt. He found a way. Yeah.
Do you mind sharing like what that concept was?
Can you expand on that?
You said that you shared a concept with him that his therapist never taught him?
The one I told you. How developmental psychology works, how the brain ages. So as we age, we're creating that sense of individuality, right? If our parent does not give us unconditional love, worth, and acceptance for existing, not for our actions, not for how we show up, not for our accomplishments, accolades, whatever it may be, the brain will constantly search outwardly to be able to receive that sense of validation, because those are essential needs, right? Being loved, being worthy, being provided for, all those things are bare essential human needs. So if the parents don't give that to the child, or whoever is in charge of the child, that's something they will constantly seek outwardly. And that's where we get the people pleasers, the sabotagers, even the really like hardcore fucking military dudes who push and grind and hustle always. And they're many of them were not loved. Many of them, I've worked with a lot of veterans. Many of them were not loved. They were not accepted. They were not seen as worthy. So they enlisted, they sought, and they never found it. And it's because during that age range, we found, and this is very recent, it's like over the last 5 years that we found this out. So like, don't get mad at the parents. They didn't know any better like that. But I was raised to, you get straight A's. You got B's, cool. You can get A's. And that was constantly how I sought validation. And it pushed me into my eating disorder also. It pushed me into drug addiction. It pushed me into the hospital. I was very type A. Most of the time, type A is actually a trauma response. Not always, but most of the time.
Yeah, no, definitely. I want to go back to like the gut health. Yes. I know they label your gut as like your second brain. And I know you talk a lot about gut health being the key to mental health and performance. Like, what's the first thing people need to change if they want to reclaim their mind and body?
It's super basic, and the supplement companies will hate me, which is funny because I've worked with a lot of supplement companies. First off, you don't need 90% of the supplements that are in your fucking supplement counter. Like, I take like 6 on average, and it's just because I'm super active, and to eat that much food would be fucking ridiculous. So I train MMA, so I'm an amateur MMA fighter in my free time. But anything that is more than 5 ingredients, you shouldn't have it in the house. I'd say 8 on the high end, right? My rules, very basic. I have about 80 to 90% of clean foods. It's 90 when I'm cutting weight or trying to maintain lower. So just proteins. You know, it could be if you're vegan or vegetarian, make sure that you're pairing your proteins. You have your rice and you have your beans, because vegan proteins typically don't have a complete amino acid profile. They only have part of the 9 essential amino acids. The rest 11 are called non-essential amino acids because we get them as a byproduct of other foods as they're breaking down. But I'd say get your protein in. For most people who aren't super active, that's actually only about 0.8 per pound of body mass. That's it. It's not very much. Vegetables are essential for microbiome health. If you aren't eating any right now, I'm not going to go eat 8 to 12 cups of vegetables. There's no way you're going to do it, but start having a serving per meal, right? And you can throw very like sneaky stuff in, like spinach, kale, into shakes very easily. Yep. if you're going to have dairy, that's a very controversial thing right now. If you have issues with dairy, try raw. I have yet to have one single client who had an issue with raw dairy when they switched out. What happens when they heat it is they actually kill the bacteria that help your gut process it. And dairy is very high in calcium, bioavailable calcium, right? So there's these supplements, but many of them are not bioavailable. We don't have the ability to break them down. If you can get it from whole food sources, get it from whole food sources. Complex carbohydrates. Guess what? By the way, fruit and vegetables are also sugar. Just so people is going to freak out. Fruit and any carbohydrate is sugar. It's just a more complex carbon chain of sugar. So this whole vilifying of sugar, for me, when someone's craving sugar, it's just an indicator they've had a lot of stress, if not a lot of traumatic experiences, and their body is screaming for energy, and they're probably sleep deprived and burned out. Again, have yet to have a person who's craving sugar who's not experiencing those things. If your body is screaming something, it's a symptom of something else that is underlying. These are all essential fiber and then prebiotic foods, not probiotic supplements, prebiotic foods. Probiotics are a different strain than what your gut is already creating. And we know so little on the longitudinal research of what probiotics do because they're very new. I don't touch probiotics with a 10-foot pole. I've actually seen myself alter how I digest and absorb foods before and after probiotics in not a positive way. I typically gain weight. Some people start losing weight. Some people gain weight.
That's interesting.
Do not alter your gut chemistry. Focus on honing in and taking care of your already occurring bacteria, because each person's bacteria is uniquely like titrated for them. It's like your fingerprint. There is no one else in the world that has your gut bacteria. And that is extremely, extremely important that you take care of it, because it is responsible not only for your mood, your endocrine system, your hormones, your central nervous system directly ties in. And if it's in an extremely inflamed state, that's where we start to also have issues with gut dysbiosis. They call it leaky gut. That's the technical term is dysbiosis. Yep. And if someone's going through all that, that's also going to create inflammation to the rest of the body. The nervous system is going to be dysregulated. And don't even get me started on how difficult it's going to be able to start working on their psyche if they're dealing with those things all the time. I typically deal actually a lot with like people come to me for cognitive stuff. And we find out later on they're dealing with gastritis, ulcerative colitis, the beginnings of RA, SIBO, IBS. I myself had gastritis and IBS. Put it all into remission. Haven't had a symptom in 6 years, because a lot of that is that permeability that happens to the intestinal lining because of the chronic hypervigilance, or they're just eating like an asshole. So the best thing you can do for yourself if you're dealing with mental health is change your diet. And I mean, I have specific protocols that I have curated for my business that are specifically for but like the stuff I just gave you, run with it. You know, having complex carbohydrates in like 3 to 5 meals over the course of the day, that's going to give you sustained energy. Also, clarity and function. What do people do first thing in the morning? They get a smoothie and they get coffee, or they get coffee with a frappuccino. Whole bunch of sugar, no nutrients, a lot of caffeine. Guess what, guys? Caffeine is a drug. It is a drug. And it messes with your dopamine centers. We're all dopamine fiends, constantly chasing the next hit. And we don't even regulate ourselves. And we wonder why we can't take care of everything. It's like everything is carefully, it's very blatant if you actually just look. Everything is catered to keep you sick. Everything outside.
I mean, if you look at ingredients in foods that they sell today, compared to the same exact food that they sold 20 years ago, there's exponentially more, and you can't even pronounce half the shit that's in them nowadays.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And a lot, wild. I mean, things like xanthan and guar, those are bacteria that are extreme, like those are in a lot of things as a thickener. That creates gut dysbiosis. It's in everything to thicken it, to make it to the mouth feel, right? Everything is, don't get me started. Everything is about feeling good, right? But then there's also those who seek pain. Like you have the community who's like, fuck this, fuck emotions. We need to push for pain. And then there's like, no, but everything needs to feel good. And I'm just like the middle path. Like you need both. You need both for life. And it's also goes, so I think of everything as like, you can calibrate everything. Like the Western indoctrination is more of like this hypervigilance almost, right? It's that hustle, grind, push. Then you got the esoteric, which is much more like parasympathetic, like downregulation, happiness, joy. You need both for a complete human experience. And settling firmly and planting your flag on one end or the other, that is where disease occurs. Because if you don't have enough stress, you don't grow. But if you have too much stress, you break down.
Exactly. It's
the middle path.
I've heard it kind of like said before, like training like an athlete, where you want to give yourself enough stress where you're pushing out of your boundaries, but then you want to be able to take that step back and have that relaxing time as well, which is just like an athlete and how they train. They stress their muscles and then they go into a relaxation where they don't work out for like a week.
Yep.
And then they go back and go really hard, and it's a give and take. And if you don't have that give and take and you lean too far one way, they're going to either hurt themselves when they're lifting because their muscles aren't going to have that time to recover, or they're going to have too much recovery and they're not going to be able to play at the highest level that they want to be playing at.
Yep. It's that simple. And I literally did I did my first challenge in like 4 years. I called it Unfuck Your System. That was fun. And what we did is it was a 4-module course, and we went through how the nervous system and the gut microbiome works. And I do this with my clients. I periodize stress, like, because I work on their movement programming as well. Like, they get all aspects of that. So I'm like, okay, if this is a very stressful work week, we're going to be shifting certain things out to make sure we're modulating that stress response, because we're still trying to heal psychologically. And if you obviously go over the deep end, well, we're doing more harm than good, because that inflammation, your body doesn't distinguish between exercise stress and life stress. It's a eustress, exercise for sure, but you're still having that stress response to the nervous system, and there's still a bandwidth that we have. And especially if someone's responding and like dealing with trauma, that's always going to be a system overload, because a traumatic memory is basically being relived when you're experiencing it. Because normal memories, you and I are having a conversation, we're good, cool. Like, you tomorrow, you're like, oh, I had a podcast interview with Ariel. No emotional volatility, right? But traumatic memories we're not quite sure behind all the mechanisms, but it does go to like literally a system overload. Like you might have been sleep deprived, you might have had too many stressful events that were leading up to it. But what happens is your brain like takes a snapshot of that traumatic experience, and it goes, I can't process this right now. So it literally pushes it down. And that's where triggers come from. Is your brain pushes it down. It has all these correlative markers around it. And we found now that emotions and traumas are actually stored in the body. Like, it vibrates at a hertz. You can go and actually scan people's bodies in anger and resentment and frustration. It vibrates at different hertz. So those memories are pushed down. And until you go back and actually unpack it, and that's the thing, is most people cope, but they don't realize coping is meant to be a short-term strategy, not a long-term one. And that's where addictions and chronic anxiety and depression and all those things come up, because people never take the time, energy, and we're not taught how to come back and actually do this. And that's what I do, is I teach people how to do that while stabilizing their entire body and nervous system. Because if you're chronically stressed out, I can't be like, oh yeah, let's go look at the death of your mother, or that rape that happened when you were 6 years old that you pushed down. You can't do that. And that's where I feel there's a big gap.
100. I completely agree. My wife does like shamanic healing and stuff like that, and training her shaman. And that's a lot of what people come to her for. What women come to her for is sexual traumas and stuff like that. And she has to make sure that she opens it in a meditative state and gets people like out of their mind and into their body, so that way they can actually go through the process and how they're supposed to go through the process. What are some of the biggest warning signs someone is living in a dysregulated state?
Burnout, exhaustion, fatigue, apathy, disconnection, addiction.
And then going back to, like, you say eat raw dairy. I know, at least in Florida, I don't know other states, my wife, she'll buy like raw milk, but it will literally say not for human consumption on it. And you're only supposed to buy it for your animals. Like, why?
because the FDA, because I've literally seen people cure certain, I personally have not let anyone through a dairy protocol. I do, if you want me to look, I have a couple people who might be able to, but I've utilized it many times. Like, we actually had a raw food co-op out here in Santa Monica 10 years ago. My mom was onto something. And no, it was more than that. It was 14 years. Anyway, this raw food co-op, it was a PMA. So private member association, you had to sign like a disclosure, all that, to be able to go in. And they had raw milk, raw dairy, raw meat, all those different things. Someone got pissed off that was a PMA member, and they went and reported them to the FDA. They came in and shut them down, and the owner was put in prison. I don't know the depth of conspiracy that's going on there. I'm not going to profess to that. 6-month timeline, right? So I think that honestly, it has to do with the fact that, first off, the dairy industry is huge, right? So for them to convert to doing raw dairy, it goes against their prerogative, their agenda. So it goes to the budget for sure. But I think that there's also a lot of stuff to go into, like healing and a whole bunch of different aspects around raw dairy that is extremely beneficial for human beings. And that doesn't fit their agenda, because if you have a populace that's sick, they're constantly consuming. If you have a populace that's self-sustaining, there go your
There's
margins.
no profit in fixing people.
Yeah, there go your margins.
Yeah.
Yep. It's and the more that I see, and I'm part of a couple different organizations, everything in our life right now is constantly seeking outward, and that's why I'm about going inward, because I've seen miraculous things, absolutely miraculous, and I believe that that's a lot of more of the esoteric. But they've been around for thousands of years, and here we're vilifying it with a couple hundred years of science and research. And don't get me wrong, like, we've had amazing things in medical advances, but a lot of it is, again, focused around fixing things that have already broken, instead of getting to the root as to why things are actually going on. People are so fixated on managing symptoms, they don't realize that fixing the symptoms is not fixing the problem. Symptoms are indicating that something far deeper is going on.
And what's crazy about it is, like, you can go take headache medicine, but the side effects on that are like stroke, death, heart attack,
right?
Like all these things.
Yep.
It's wild. It's
and every single wild. Every single one of those like pills, every single one of them alters your gut chemistry. Just a couple milligrams. That's all it takes. And people don't realize that. And then and a fun fact for your population too, just those who are gluten and all that, never had issues, because I also was when I went abroad, and that's because of glyphosate. I can't pronounce it correctly, because they spray that on all of our wheat products, and they're not legally obligated to label the wheat products that are sprayed with it. But that's another conversation.
Interesting.
Yeah. I've had multiple clients, myself included, where I never had issues with gluten that was in like Italy, because I eat bread over there all the time. Switzerland, all that, never had an issue. But when I come here and I eat bread that's like at a store that's not sourdough, fun fact, sourdough typically is good for people because it already has the enzymes attached to it. So your gut, it's almost like, here it is, here's the enzyme to digest it. So, and that can actually help with healing your gut. And sometimes I have clients who are wanting to eat bread, they throw that in there as well. But yeah, majority of gluten stuff is actually glyphosate.
Yeah, that's wild. I know a lot of people that I know from overseas and stuff like that. They always come to the United States and they say that the United States food, it tastes better, but they always feel like shit after eating it. And then when they go home, they drop weight, they feel absolutely amazing. And
Yep.
it's definitely because of everything that we spray on our stuff, all the additives, all these.
It's in the air too.
This weird shit.
I always lose weight when I travel abroad, every single time, without exception. Don't even have to try. Here, I have to focus. It's because those toxins also create inflammation within the body. A lot of people don't drop weight because there's a lot of toxins, and then they stress themselves out, which creates more oxidative damage. So 95% of disease that onsets is from oxidative / free radical damage. Same thing, essentially. They're just interchangeable. That can either be environmental, or what you're putting into your body, or how you perceive the world. Either way, that cumulative stress is what creates that systemic inflammation and that hypervigilance. And then you have so it's like, yeah, monitor what you're doing, but I would rather people not be freaked the fuck out about every single toxin and be a little bit more moderate, because I've also seen people who are super anal in that, and they actually make themselves sicker because they're so focused on that because of the stress that they're incurring by how they're perceiving the world.
That's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
I know lately in Florida, it was probably, I think it was like a month or two ago, there was like this mysterious fog that was happening.
I heard about it.
And people, yeah, people started testing it, and
Oh, they
it ended
did?
up having like bacteria in it, like all this weird stuff in it. And yeah, we have no idea how it got here. I mean, we have an idea of how it got here, but
Yeah, I'm
we have
sure.
no truth on how it got here.
Yeah, kind of like
Which,
the weather balloons and yeah,
yeah,
interesting. That's my new phrase over the last 4 years. I'm like, nothing surprises me anymore. Nothing. Not at all. I'm just like, cool. Oh, aliens? Cool. Like, yeah, you had your clone? You made okay, cool. What lab was it from? All right. Like it's
yep.
like
Oh, I'm in a group chat of some guys that are here in St. Petersburg, Florida, and one of them
okay.
messaged this morning, and they're like, "I have a feeling that all the IVF babies that don't get born are being grown in a lab somewhere, and they're and they're
I
using
wouldn't
them for
put it
like
past
trafficking
anyone.
and
I
stuff
really
like
wouldn't.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah."
Yeah, I mean, for like when the COVID stuff came out, and I'd known this from the beginning because I had been like heavily researching the technology behind the vaccine. And back in 2020, I was literally screaming from the rooftops: vitamin D exposure, exercise, eat well. And what did they fucking say 4 years later?
Yep.
But anyway, the vaccine technology it was created. It's not a vaccine. It was created using the CRISPR technology, and CRISPR's original usage was for designer babies, genetic, like choosing your baby, what hair color, what eye color, are they going to be athletic? They use that same tech in the COVID vaccine, and we wonder why everybody's having
That's
heart
wild.
issues. Yeah, it's an
Yeah.
RNA. It alters the RNA. Yeah. But this is not a conspiracy chat. So.
Yeah.
Not conspiracy, it's truth, but yeah.
Yep. No, I completely agree. We'll move off topic.
Yeah,
You've talked about how most people don't even know what it feels like to be fully alive.
they don't.
Like, what does what does that actually feel like?
No narrative, right? Because a lot of people walk around with that internal narrative, that those thoughts, the shoulds, the coulds, the have to, the regret, all those different things. Um, it's a non-association with the narrative, and when the time goes on, like no narrative whatsoever. Like it's been pretty quiet up here unless I'm extremely exhausted for about 3 years. And the reason why those thoughts arise when someone has done a lot of quote unquote work, I really hate the woke, awaken, enlightened bullshit because everybody's on a journey. Is because when you're exhausted, it's true. You know it is.
There's a comedian that brought it up. They're like, every white girl is on a journey, and
So, you'll have to send me that. Yeah, kind of like Cali sober. I'm on my mushrooms, but um, that narrative arises when we're exhausted. I mean, some people call it lower consciousness, monkey brain, whatever you want to call it. So that is when some of our deepest seated beliefs and like core memories, even if we've done a lot of quote unquote work, still come up. That is the only time when someone's really dealt with the majority, right? There's always work, but the majority of some of the deep seated stuff should ever come up when someone's actually done quote unquote the work. And that goes for me whenever that happens, like, okay, where am I at my training? Where am I at with my food? Am I overextending myself? Am I not listening? Am I sacrificing? Like, am I going back to old tendencies? But that it's peace. Like it's either complete peace, like I can't even, it's a vibration, it's a hum, it's a pure sense of contentedness without having to do anything, just existing. And anyone can do it. That's the thing. Like I have had a lot of clients and I'll get on consultations because I don't work with everyone. I'm very particular with who I work with because of my group, Wellness from Within. I protect them. I want them to have good communication, everybody to work cohesively together. And my one-on-one mentorships, again, I have a culture, I have standards, I do not accept everyone. But when I do a consultation or an assessment, I bring them to that because everybody wants peace. and they don't slow down enough because they're told that they shouldn't slow down, because there goes their value and their worth and their expectations. And they have to be doing things. If they're not doing things, they're not worthy. They're not accomplishing them. Slow them down. And they realize that it's always there.
Yep. That makes total sense. Because I know there was it was probably about 2 years of my life where I just didn't have any inner dialogue. And it was weird because some people were like, oh, that's not right. But it
right.
felt so peaceful because I didn't have these like different narratives, one thing telling me to do this and then another thing telling me to do this. I just went and just did what I needed to do and what I knew I needed to do. And I didn't have all of these different things trying to pull me in all these different directions. So yeah, I feel that.
Where did you feel that? I'm curious. Where did that come up in your body? You said you knew, but it was no dialogue. So where did that knowing come from?
Me, it was more my sacral. That's one thing that my wife tells me as well.
Sacral authority. Yeah.
Yeah. Anytime you ask yourself a question and like feel into your sacral and like, where does it bring you?
Yep.
And yeah, that's what I've been able to do. I know when I get stressed, then stuff starts going on, and it came back more when I had my daughter, just because I mean there's just so many moving pieces that
you're a parent. That's one of those times in which like it's kind of just hell in a handbasket and you got to do what you got to do for the first few years of life. And I get that.
Yep.
And that's why it's one of the most selfless things, because you totally sacrifice yourself during that time frame, and you have a little being, but and then it's teaching, figuring yourself out after that time frame. Like, what can I do? So,
yep. If you could like give one piece of advice to someone who feels completely stuck and lost, what would it be?
I'm going to give 2. Slow down and breathe. 5 seconds in, pause at the top, exhale for 7 seconds. That's what we call heart-head coherence. There's a research institute in California that's doing a lot of research on the heart and the head. And I've been using this breathing modality for the last 4 years. And so many of us are run by the mind instead of the heart. Guess what? Both of them have neurons. And both of them operate totally independently of each other unless you sync them up. So they have actually found that if you do that breathing style of a shorter inhale to an extended exhale, the heart actually syncs up in firing with the head. So now your directions and your thoughts and all that are more correlated to heart as opposed to the head. And in July 4th of 2012, the heart has neurons, right? And neurons are not information sites; they're antenna. So they're syncing to something up there. In 2012, they found out the entire Earth has a bioelectrical field around it, and the heart syncs up to that electrical field if we slow down and breathe correctly. So you're literally syncing to the living, breathing heartbeat of the world when you do that, and that's why people are much more calm and collected. That would be number 1. And then the thoughts, the phrase I want to leave you with is, you are not your thoughts, you are the observer of them. That was a game changer for me by my mentor years and years ago. And I was like, holy shit, if I can observe it, I can't be it. And that changed everything.
That's huge. No, that's I love that. So I know your work is next level in terms of transformation. And I mean, just by talking to you, you are extremely intelligent when it comes to all of this stuff. Like the depth of knowledge that you have is freaking wild. Where can people find you if they're ready to stop settling and ready to step into their full potential?
Facebook and Instagram are super easy. Ariel Ziegler on Facebook, or Heart and Soul Wellness. That's with an N, and then soul like the sole of your foot. Or they can email me, heart and soul, again, soul of your foot, 855@gmail.com. I'm in the middle of shifting out emails, but any of those would be very easy means to message me. And they have to know that, like, you have to be ready to fully and completely commit. Like, no holds bar. I've turned down thousands and thousands of dollars because I knew they weren't ready and it wasn't in integrity. And I will never take someone that I don't know is ready, because I have no doubt in my abilities. It's them doubting their abilities that will get in the way.
100%. It's if they're not ready for change, or if they're, I mean, sometimes if they're skeptical and they don't think it's going to work. I know that one guy that you worked with, he was like, didn't tell you at first, but then kind of told you that I came in to prove you wrong.
Yep.
Like there's, if they're not open and ready for that change, then it is hard to get that change out of somebody for sure.
Yep. And actually,
I
ironically, he became one of my best clients.
love
He
that.
paid off that debt in 3 months, and he's become one of my biggest raving fans.
That's huge.
Yeah.
That is huge.
So,
well, Ariel, thank you so much for coming on here today. It's been a pleasure. One
Thank
of
you.
the more like deep and fun conversations, especially around the conspiracy theories.
Anytime.